Right, 3, 2, 1, there we go. All right, so hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown episode. Who the crap knows? We're doing a special Free Ross edition because everyone needs to free Ross. Oh wait, we did.
We did it. This is free.
Yeah.
We used to call it Free Ross Friday, but now it's Freed Ross Friday.
Yep, Freed Ross. Freed
Yes.
Ross. If he's
Freed
watching
Ross.
or listening at some point, welcome home.
Yes, absolutely. This is very good news, very good stuff. Um, Let me see. Yeah, so why don't you guys start out by sort of introducing yourselves? I just kind of thought that the people involved here would be good to talk about this stuff. So, it's a kind of an interesting rogues gallery of characters we got here, myself included. So why don't you give a little intro? Start with the rarest of passengers and just do clockwise.
Hey everyone, it's actually great to be in the same virtual room. I've been watching you all stuff for a while, and you all are just legends. So I am actually really honored to be with you guys, and especially on a really joyous occasion. This is a one for the history books. So, but yeah, I run an animation studio. I guess I work in the crypto space now, some way, shape, or form. I write a newsletter and essay column. Mostly, it started off with Bitcoin, but now it's about Austrian economics, stoicism, and other ecological and ontological stuff. So I try to make it complex topics very simple and approachable for everybody. Thank you. So, an educator. Let's go with that.
Yeah. And now we can go to Risen.
Oh, cool. I think the Brady Bunch order is a little bit different on your screen than mine, so I wasn't sure if I was next or not.
Yeah.
So, I'm Mark Risen Hopkins. I am the marketing lead for Threshold DAO, which is the one of the leading Bitcoin derivatives across multiple chains. But relevant to this conversation, I'm the former operations pod leader for Free Ross DAO, and spent a good chunk of my life, vocationally and avocationally advocating for Ross's clemency, and turns out full pardon.
Nice. Ellie, why don't you go next?
Wow. Nice to meet you guys. Really cool. Thank you, Joel, once again for getting us nerds all together. I'm Eleanor. I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I've been cryptoing for many years, and I don't know. I somehow a few years ago, although I've always been like a cypherpunk at heart, everything really took a really dark turn when Alexei Pertsa was arrested and jailed, and that has forever even, I guess, harden my position on the importance of cryptocurrency and the true cypherpunk dream. And so I think it has impacted my work in our meetups and our crypto drinks that we host every month, or at ETHDem, which is a conference hackathon, which I host every year. And I've had the pleasure of having you, Joel, speak. And actually, Threshold was a partner of us last year. So, Mark, nice to meet you.
Yes.
More people from the Threshold team actually are part of Crypto Canal and helping. So, great bunch.
Yeah, you should go there this time. This is going to be a great ETHDem year. I have applied to speak. I don't know if they're going to let me in again, but they might.
I don't know.
If so, being left on red, it's a little concerning right now. It's I might have to do a replace by fee to get that through.
Yes, the block is full. I'm sorry, the block is full. You're not passing. No, but it's an honor to be here. It's really an honor to be with all of you, and what an amazing week. Just because I have a baby who might crash and make my moment here very short, I'll just say 3 things. Yay, Ross is fucking out. Oh my god. OFAC ruling was overruled, so yay. And then 3, we have really positive news with Alexei. So it seems like the tide is changing, and it feels good. So it's an honor to celebrate with all of you tonight.
is this what winning feels like? I feel like we've been fighting for so long, and
I don't know if you see it in my eyes. I'm a little tired of winning these days. No, just kidding. I'm not.
Yeah, we're not allowed to be like angry ranchers on the internet anymore. We're just happy and we're just it feels great.
Yes.
That's really new for me. I'm not sure how I'm handling that part.
yeah, me either. It's I
So
guess
like to maybe add an appropriate like analogy, it's kind of like how Ross must be going to seeing like the sunlight for like the first time in like decades. Basically, it's just like just not used to this much good stuff out there. And it's like, whoa, let me figure out I'm going to handle this before I'm just like, yay, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely can. Yeah. I'll let the intros get done before I comment on that, because that takes me down a whole different path
Yes,
for sure.
and that is a great path to go on in this context for sure. But let's just get poor Sterling over there. Looks a little lonely in that corner there, right below me, at least for me. How's it going, man? Known you for a while. Let everyone know what you're up to and who you are and all that.
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. Joel, thanks for having me. So yeah, my name's Sterling. I've been working in the crypto industry for 10 plus years. I have actually worked with Roger Ver at Bitcoin.com on the comms team. I was the communications director there for a bit. I have also known Lynn Ulbrich since 2015, and she introduced me to her son's case. I met her at PorkFest, and we've been really good friends ever since. I've been working really hard to help Ross also get out of prison. So it's definitely been a team effort. A lot of people working hard toward these ends. Recently, I've been working in the parallel society in the network state space with Logos, primarily managing as the community lead, and I'm also the founder of an organization called Polis Laboratories, which is an institution that's focused on fixing and solving for governance as we generate and create new network states and parallel societies.
Cool stuff. Yeah, it's definitely there's so many people that I know, so many people I could talk to, but this seems to be one of the more like aligned kind of get it type people on that key issue of Free Ross. And it is kind of crazy to see that now that he's out. First of all, it was very heartening to see that for a change, a lot of the modern Bitcoin maximalists were pretty much in unison in being very happy for this. So let's just call it that thing being good. But it's still crazy to see how many people, not crypto people, but how many other people were like, what, this crazy drug kingpin got let out and you're happy about this and like that kind of stuff. So even though it's like great, it still kind of reminds me that we have to do more work as a society to kind of realize why, to make everyone realize why that there's nothing, why these kinds of cases matter.
I think it certainly didn't help that the New York Times put the word kingpin in the headline on the story too. But I think a couple of interactions for me, deep into the comments, really not the big, posts about Ross, but like there was a couple of trolls that were frequenting all the freed Ross threads that really seemed to hang all the casualties of the drug war around his neck, and it was really more about him being an avatar for a relative that may have overdosed or something, rather than actually being about anything that was relevant to his case or his situation. And I don't know necessarily, you can't change everybody's mind, but I was heartened to see that was certainly the aberration, not the rule in the threads. Like it was I've been wading through these threads for years, and fighting the good fight. Oh no, he didn't. There was no hitman. There was no all that. Curtis is alive. He wasn't actually. All these type of like in the weeds discussions, and like that may have been like 1 or 2% of the type of discussions I saw over this week in these types of threads, which is a huge change from the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like where was that vibe when he was actually standing trial and stuff like that. Although the that's sort of an unfair thing to say almost, because it takes so long to like build a consensus and turn a tide like this. It had to be, so like for example, when I first got into crypto, it was like somewhere around 2012, maybe 2013. I started using it. It was only a few months into using it that the Silk Road got shut down. So like I remember people saying, "Oh, have you heard about this? Let's just go buy. I buy all my weed on the Silk Road. You should try it out." I'm just like, and I hear about it. And I look at it. My first thought was, that guy's going to jail. Like, holy shit. Like, they're going to something like, if you're flying too close to the sun, the wax on the feather starts to melt. It gave that vibe. And I think that a lot of people, it was one of the more extreme examples of a situation where, you know, someone who technically doesn't do anything wrong is still like afoul of the law in this case and gets punished. And I do think we have to see it's almost the people who came after him sort of brought the context of Ross to something more realistic, where you have just random open source developers who, like, as far as I know, like the Silk Road was supposed to do a radical experiment on like, what if we had a radically free society and what if we didn't have government involved. It's pretty obvious that it wasn't in the context of trying to abide by current society. He was trying to do something else. Whereas then you have more other, like, for example, the Tornado Cash, the, you know, Samurai Walt's a little bit iffy on how legit they thought they were being, but like definitely like the Tornado Cash case is a case of like open source developers being thrown in prison who were not trying to be hardcore cypherpunk, stick it to the man, who were trying to be by the book kind of. And it just took those sorts of cases to be like, oh wait, this is a systemic problem. This isn't just, oh well, the one guy did some crazy illegal things and they got him for it. It's like, no, this is a problem.
What I find really interesting is that Ross's case, you know, you have other examples like Craigslist. What was that, in the mid 90s, right? People buying, selling all kinds of, you know, under the radar stuff. And then also, what is it with the Section 230 or Section 203, whatever the case is, for protection on platforms? It's like, Mark Zuckerberg, how come he's not getting slapped on the wrist, right? A lot of stuff is being sold on Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram. And then even with the Twitter files, right? We got to see how much, you know, dark stuff was being traded, sent, and, you know, sold. And yet no one on that end is going to prison except Ross. Yeah. So it's definitely showcased a double standard in the system.
You know, it's funny on that sort of note, you mentioned Facebook, and that reminded me of, I have to not give names, but there was some fellow who was he was a legislator actually in New Hampshire, and he was openly selling cannabis against the law, of course, to his colleagues on the House floor, it's kind of like the most gangster move you could think of, kind of. He just like shows up in his suit, he's like making laws, like, hey, you want a nug? Like, but the craziest part about that, he ended up having legal complications related to other things. But it kind of used that to then investigate him for the cannabis dealings. And some people had been apparently paying him for his services, his goods and services, via the Facebook Messenger, like, money transfer thing. And I just see Rare's face just like ridiculous. And this was happening for long enough that as to the point that it should have been shut down, I guess, right? As far as from that perspective, it seems like the one differentiating factor between places where things are openly sold that couldn't be afoul of the law and like the Silk Road is that those other places kind of bent the knee to the authorities in a greater sort of a way. They say, if you contact us, we will take this down. If you do this, we will work with you to take it down. And it's not that, you know, illicit stuff is not sold on those platforms. It's not at all true. It's just the fact that they're willing to do something. Now you're in the cool kids club. Now that we can use you for that, we can also use you to silence a certain laptop story, for example, etc. And it just sort of snowballs from there.
I mean, but also look at the fact pattern on everything you just mentioned, Rare, and you, Joel. So the types of people that tend to get this actually kind of goes back to something I couldn't say when I was at Free Rossdow, because the family didn't want us characterizing Ross's case as political persecution, because that would limit the freedom of a president to want to sign a commutation. But obviously it's a political persecution. Because if you look at the fact pattern of Mark Zuckerberg, Craig Newmark, Ross Ulbricht, this congressman, even my case to a much lesser extent, the difference between the people that do get prosecuted and don't get prosecuted is the level of political involvement and political voice they try to exercise. Look at Backpage. This is another perfect example. Identical to Craigslist, but they are the Observer. I mean, that was the same company as the Observer that you see in every little free newsstand in America. They're firebrands. Like, they go after political corruption at every level. That's what they're known for, and they paid for it mostly by selling ads in classified sections on Backpage, primarily dominated by the sex worker business. And so, of course, that's what lands both of the founders of the Observer in prison, one committing suicide while awaiting trial. So, these are the fact patterns that we kind of look at. It's you can bend the rules, just don't draw attention to yourself, or certainly don't draw attention to the corruption of the system that you're trying to rebel against.
Yeah, and I think it's good.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
All right, yeah, thanks, brother. Yeah, so it's good to point out very specifically, too, that Ross was internally ideologically motivated, philosophically motivated. He was a follower of Austrian school economics. He was a follower of Rothbard, of Mises, and he really believed in these ideas, and he wanted to actualize and operationalize these ideas in real life. And his idea of doing that was pushing the Silk Road. So it's pushing and building it, but it's no surprise that he ended up getting a double life sentence plus 40 years, because two things are involved. One is the drug war, right? Drugs and the drug war. And then the other part is crypto, which at the time is this novel technology that's being stated as a cypherpunk and crypto anarchist invention that's meant to undermine the powers that be in the nation state. So it very quickly became, aside from a political prosecution, a kind of modern inquisition or witch hunt. And so we've seen this being carried forward. You guys mentioned the different cases, but it's just this notion of, we're going to go after people now en masse who are leveraging crypto, and especially if they get drugs involved. And I think about oh man, yeah, I lost my train of thought. I'm in the zone when it comes to this particular.
You said it perfectly. You said it. I think it was good to remind us that Ross was politically motivated. I understand that they didn't want the case to be like this martyr too much, but for us, we knew what he stood for. Maybe that's what you were going with.
Yeah, no, that's right. You jogged my memory. What the apotheosis or the pinnacle of what happened was in the creation of Operation Choke Point 2.0 in crypto, where the government actually started going after any kind of cryptocurrency business, even if they were doing things completely legally, right? And we had I had this experience working at CryptoSpace, which was an exchange in the U.S. We went through like 12 bank accounts, and all those bank accounts got shut down, and we had the feds messing up with us regularly, including the FBI and several other agencies, simply because we were in crypto and they wanted to do what they could to hurt us. But since we were doing everything legally, they had to go about it in a backroom, pressurized kind of way, and it was really horrible. So if they do catch you doing something illegal or that's criminally wrong, for sure they're going to try to lock you up, or at least that was the case. Of course, we can get into if that's actually changed or not. Yeah, thanks for jogging my memory there, my friend.
Well, hey, government doesn't like competition. I mean, there's some. Sure. Let's look at this one, right? So, what is it? You have all kinds of honeypots, and one that comes to mind is like Anom, ANOM. They were selling, private encrypted devices for drug dealers to sell and communicate. And then you find out later that it's actually a company ran by the intelligence community, and it was a way to entrap everyone. or sort of like BitTorrents. I didn't realize this either, but sometimes some of those BitTorrents that people download are just, honeypots for information to find out who's doing what. So when Ross is trying to live the principle, which is also really interesting because Roger's the same way, right? He's living the principle, and then they don't like the competition. It shows that one individual is very powerful, right? And got to crush that. Can't have people standing up and walking away.
Yeah, this is something that kind of puzzled, so I've been sort of very aware of the political scene as far as the current president is concerned. And I remember I never liked him in the beginning. And then after he got in, I just he seemed like a massive letdown, like a disappointment of things. It just I just wasn't that, some things he liked me. I just didn't get it. However, it took me a while to realize that because he wasn't the chosen one of any party, because he says, look, I'm a powerful voice. I'm a celebrity. I'm a rich guy. I'm just going to for lack of a better term, just raw dog it to the presidency. I'm not going to do all these little play these guys games. I'm just going to go in there and win. And because of the ability of just someone to just get power without going through the proper channels, as it were, that targeted him, that marked him for destruction. And then they just threw it. It wasn't anything in his first term that was a super threat to the powers that be. In fact, that was my biggest complaint, is that he didn't really do a lot different from other presidents. But just because the way he acquired power was an unapproved method, they tried to just smash him to bits, and almost succeeded. And now you feel the difference in this vibe, the day 1, day 2, day 3 vibe. And there's just a lot of stuff I don't necessarily agree with him on. But as far as the full pardon for Ross and all his comments about, these people are scum, all the firings, all the just, the CBDC ban kind of thing, just everything. It just seems like he's on a warpath for real, because again, he tried to do something that was just not permitted. And then there you go. And then you got to
Well,
Guys,
probably, but he's also
wait,
got some.
You got to take off, Ellie?
Yeah, I have a crying child here who really needs me, but just a few words then, and I'll hop off. It was a pleasure. I wish I could have this conversation for longer. This is really something I care a lot about.
We will at ETH Day.
Yes, we will at ETH Day. A few things I was thinking. One, are we going to see a revive of the Silk Road? Do we think that Ross Ulbricht, after spending 11 years in jail, is still interested in crypto? Are we going to see something there? I'm kind of excited for that. Second, Tornado Cash devs Roman Storm and Alexei Pertsev are, although it feels like the tide is changing with this OFAC ruling being reversed, they're not out of the woods yet. So I would, if anybody's listening and anybody's interested in donating and helping out, it's very costly to fight these big powers that be, because sadly, I think although Ross is now maybe becoming a beacon of hope for a lot of us, there's still a few others out there that are still in jail and are still in legal trouble. And I'm also thinking about, of course, about Roger Ver, and we just, it's a good sign. Ross is out, but I want to say that the fight keeps going because others need our help and need us to talk about them and the good they've done in the world. And we do need financial privacy, and Tornado Cash is an amazing tool that is still providing utility today. And I'm just delighted that those addresses are approved again. They're not on the OFAC list. For any RPC endpoint out there who was blacklisting anything coming out of Tornado Cash, it's time to reverse those things. So yeah, on that note, thank you, Joel, once again for gathering all of us. I'm so sorry for my short visit. Keep fighting all, and I look forward to speaking with you in person. And I wish you all a good night.
Well said. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
On that, I think she mentions privacy. That's a big thing. And I think that was the ultimate takeaway with Ross, is the lack of privacy in the crypto space altogether. And I'm going to shill this one out, but I think if people could pay attention to the Samurai and TDev cases as well, they have a big you know, what happens to them is going to be big.
Mhm.
So hopefully people are paying attention, rooting for them as to free Samurai and T-Dev and bring back Whirlpool, because that thing was definitely adding something to the mix. Pun intended.
The mix. It is kind of funny, I have to say, the choices of persecution. Sometimes it is it's like low hanging fruit. It's like people that they're like, okay, what charges can we apply based on what they've done? Okay, go for it. It seems like the trigger with Tornado Cash and Samurai, if I were to guess, was the sanctions in particular, because North Korea supposedly used Tornado Cash, and a big part of like the global like throwing your weight around thing for that the U.S. federal government does is like, well, we'll apply sanctions to you, and you're a bad nation if you do that. And then on the obviously, there's allegedly people in Russia who are using Samurai, and I think that the Samurai people unfortunately openly advertised to said people saying, you want to evade sanctions, use our service. It's like, bro, don't do that. But I think that that's the trigger that really like, it's the threat. It's not the legality, illegality. It's the threat to a hegemonic power element, I think, is what really causes them to be like, all right, you got to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but then there's also the possibility like there's no deal. You know, like for example, Sam Bankman-Fried cutting deals left, right, and center. I mean, maybe the issue with Samurai and Tornado Cash is that they didn't give anything in return. You know, they were like, "Hey, we'll make campaign contributions to the DNC. Let us off the hook." You know,
I mean that's how power works. Like, I mean, like I can tell you, in of course we all can observe politics and see what happens there, just like you said, Rare. But like even when I was at the camp in Beaumont, like I tried to, I was like, I came in there, I'm going to keep my nose clean. I want to, but the place was corrupt. All the guards were on the take, and they said, okay, we don't want somebody hanging around here that's just going to be, unimpeachable. We have to, send a message to this individual that they need to participate in some sort of give and take here. Otherwise, they've got no incentive to keep their mouth shut when they witness something bad on our side. And so they wrote up basically a fake infraction for me that kept me locked up for an extra 3 months, literally for walking too slow. That was the infraction. It's just to send the message, that this is what it is. And I think it's not exactly the same thing, but it's whenever power sees something that it can't control for whatever reason, the power imbalance that it enjoys is flipped for whatever dynamic reason that exists. They've got to put a stop for it. And if you've got somebody out there saying, we're building a better way for money, we're building a better way for commerce, we're building a better way to have financial freedom, and if that involves evading sanctions, which threatens the biggest powers in the world, even if it isn't a true threat, like the amount of money going through Tornado Cash and going through Samurai was not a threat to the United States government, but it was the idea that it could be that had to be squashed before it became a real problem.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the thing is, at the same time, taking it back to Ross, the opposite is also true. It's if you have some petty criminal trying to do stuff or whatever, there's not going to be this groundswell of support behind someone. The fact that like Ross was an innovator and he was an idealist, and he was trying to make the world a better place, not just trying to make the world a more idealistic place according to his ideals, but like trying to make it better, trying to take a lot of like the corrupt and violent, black markets and make them a lot more like safe and white market-esque. A lot of these kinds of things, there's a reason. Let's be honest, it's really maybe one of the most cynical, like in the most. This is such an optimistic show, right? It's such a good news show, but the one most cynical thing I'll say is a lot of people get some attention, and then whoops, they the case doesn't go their way. They get locked up, and then people just forget about them. They just, we already did that, didn't work, whatever. And it is a testament to Ross and his mother, of course, especially Lynn, but just the community, that the Free Ross ideal got stronger with each passing year. Each passing year, the myth around the man became better and more positive, and then the FUD about hitman and all this kind of stuff just started to fade away, and to where we're at now, it was like it wasn't just that a lot of people advocated for him, and that the Libertarian Party specifically advocated for him and got Trump's ear and was like, look, if you want to get into power, we'll help you out, but this is one of the things we want. It's like classic coalition building. That's all true. But if you see the kinds of people across so many spectrums of walks of life and things that were just like, Free Ross, and you saw like the Haktua girl going out there and doing that and stuff, just the fact that it got elevated to that level, I think speaks a lot to like the underlying mission, that it wasn't just about saving, the last few decades of this man's life. It was a lot about a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I was just going to say, it certainly helped that the case itself was so broken and so corrupt that it kept people interested in helping Ross out and helping him toward his goal of gaining more freedom, right? Because we hadn't mentioned it yet during this call, but 2 of the federal agents that were involved in the case were actually convicted of stealing Bitcoin from the Silk Road, and they actually spent time in prison. There was a DEA agent, and then one of the agents worked for the Secret Service, actually. So that right there, and also those guys managed and maintained they had the keys to the castle. They managed to maintain the DPR handle on the Silk Road, and they could actually control not only the aspects and the functioning of the Silk Road, but they could actually type in messages and impersonate Ross as DPR. And so one of the things that happened as part of these quote unquote murder for hire allegations, what it looks like is that these agents probably orchestrated that as a result of their own nefarious agenda for stealing funds, controlling that ecosystem, plus looking like they're doing their job. So this poisoned the well of that whole case. And interestingly, in trial, Joshua Dratel, Ross's counsel, wasn't actually able to make his case, and they weren't even able to talk about those corrupt agents. That they were told that they can't talk about that in trial, and that anytime they mentioned that, there was an objection, and then that objection was sustained. So that right there, it aggravated and infuriated so many people that it created a movement out of it. And then, of course, when he was handed two life sentences plus 40 years, with the judge doing a monologue on how his libertarian ideals and values are so bad for quote unquote the social fabric, that right there goes to tell you how powerful it made his image, his myth, the legend that is Ross Ulbricht. So I think that actually ended up working out in our favor in the long. I mean, it never should have happened to begin with, but it was definitely the preconditions necessary to create the change that we're currently seeing in society.
Yeah. I mean, here's someone who's definitely read Railroaded, probably multiple times, because man, that you nailed every aspect of that, and that leads me to the point that I was going to make when I was interrupting you, was that Lynn deserves all the credit. Like, I mean, just even for my part, I was just a torchbearer for a brief period of time. I was locked when I was locked up. Most of the people that are locked up are not just forgotten by society, but by their own family. They're just put on a shelf just as a coping mechanism. Like, they can't think about what they're going through every single day. It's so hard for the family to know that you're in a situation that is oftentimes violent, not safe. You're not getting good nutrition. You're not getting good medical care. They can't, like, if someone was sitting next to you and you were just too poor to afford these things, that would be bad enough. But to know that there's nothing you can do about it, even if you had $1 million, you cannot make sure they get good medical care or get good, nutrition. Like, that's hard on a family. And Lynn not only had to deal with that with Ross being in some of the worst institutions in this country, but she also spent day after day dwelling into the details of all that stuff that you just mentioned, Sterling, like all the different injustices and corrupt acts by the government, documenting it, not just documenting it, but like footnoting it and digging deep into all that, and then going on the road day after day for year after year to spread the word so that people like us can also help her carry that torch. Like, cannot say enough good things about this woman. Every mother loves their child, but nobody loves their child like Lynn.
Yeah, that's for damn sure.
Never get in the way of a mom and her cub.
Yeah, and there's something definitely like special. There's something definitely very special about Lynn and the way she acted. There's just an undeniable intelligence and competence that, like, set our mind to it and just, like, day after day, week after week, year after year, worked at it and just weaseled her way into, like, the highest levels of power and getting to be able to get an audience there. And just that's not something that, even no matter how much a mother loves her child, that most mothers would be able to figure out. So it's someone needs to put her in charge of something else now, like, because she seems to be pretty good at what she does. I mean, can you imagine, like, maybe a little gauche to say something like that, but, like, if some crypto project, like, recruited her to be their, like, head of community and marketing or whatever.
All right, stop. Let's not give anybody any ideas.
Well, I mean, maybe you can provoke some, like, some unprovoked gifts or something, and she can say, "I'm not interested, but thanks for the donation," and then we help them out. Which, speaking of which,
I mean, I'm just saying, put her in charge of, like, world peace or something. If she can get this done, what can't she get done?
yes, maybe I don't know, abolish all taxation. Maybe she, if anyone, I'm just thinking, who am I going to put on that task? Could be like, can she and Elon Musk, like, tag team on that one issue? Just be like, just crush it, because both of them seem to be good at getting their way on things. But so it's about Ross's support and things like that. So first of all, I have at times, not often, but a few times in my life, been out of, I wouldn't even say out of work, but out of career for a little bit. And just a little bit of a break from that, whether it's intentional or not, is just really hard to get back into whatever your career was. And I know it's got to be a lot worse for example, stay-at-home mothers who then decide to go back into the workforce afterwards. Just that break. But to be like, to take a break from humanity, basically, for like a dozen years. I mean, I hope the best for Ross, and I think he has all the support he needs, thankfully. But man, that's got to be rough to, like, get back into the grind of things, get back to functioning. I keep seeing that kitty. Yeah, there's double kitties on the show this time. Go ahead, Rare.
Yeah, something that I guess it kind of I want to keep everything positive for the most part. But
Yeah,
this part kind of bothers me. You mentioned it at the beginning, is that how people are, I guess the blinders are on so tight and narrow that understanding the concept of why his freedom and pardon was important. And then even that, to Roger's extent, it's like watching people cheer for the demise of others. It's like, hey, I get it. It's one thing if you're cheering on for your favorite team or project to win out, but it's another when you're like, no, he deserves to be in prison, and then not even realizing the reasons why, other than that bad, he go jail, right? Very Neanderthalic at that point. Yeah. Not to, be disrespectful to Neanderthals, but the idea is just how surprising it is to me that every time we think people don't read and write and the level of comprehension is at base level, that it sinks even lower. And it's like there's something that really fundamentally has to get fixed, or some kind of adjustment where we're thinking beyond the headline. Because yes, it's great. Ross is out. I hope Roger gets a fair shake. And also with everyone else, like, Tornado Cash and Samurai and Ian, and even to an extent, not many people know Dexter Taylor. He just printed a ghost gun while in New York. That's it. Didn't do anything else other than print a, ghost gun, and he's serving life. So these are things that, I think people have to they need to do their research. DYOR.
In a 95 or the vast majority of these kinds of cases we've mentioned, with the only exception I think of Alexei Pertsev, they've all been in the U.S. jurisdiction, and I think the U.S. is still probably the greatest country on the planet. That being said, there's something deeply wrong with how the government and the criminal justice system have developed to this state. I think to a certain extent it might be like a sort of odd side effect of a, in theory, constitutionally limited government, right? Where you're supposed to have rights, you're supposed to have fair trials, you're supposed to have all this stuff. So, and the vast majority of the population just, I would say, lives in a pretty great spot, so that now you have prosecutors and stuff having to go to more and more insidious lengths to try to get what they want. They can't just say, that's a crime, we're going to arrest you for the crime. Now you got to make things up. Now you got to plant evidence. Now you got to plea bargain. Now you got to threaten. Now you got to go through all these things. And before you know it, you have this system that has an immense amount of power that it should not have, that no one knows it has. And when you see someone like Ross or like Roger or someone like that get some crazy railroading happen, the average person's reaction in the U.S., I would say, even people who believe in freedom or pro-freedom, the average person's reaction is, ooh, well, that's crazy, but they probably did something I don't know about that was really bad, that's why they deserved it. Because the system is so fair. It works so great. So if something happened, there must be something I don't know about that they did that was really bad. And I do think the last 4 or so years changed that for a lot of people, when you saw the entire right side of the political spectrum get exposed to good old-fashioned American criminal justice in a dark kind of a way, including the sitting president right now. And now they're like, oh, okay, there are problems.
I mean, to quote Norm Macdonald quoting Patton Oswalt, the worst part is the hypocrisy. I think we don't really get up in arms about this happening in a lot of other liberal democracies or other parts of the world, is because we're the ones that are supposed to be the beacon of liberty, and we're supposed to be better. We're supposed to have this system that's ultimately fair. And so, that's why, I mean, this stuff happens all over the world. Although per capita, it happens more often to Americans than it does anywhere else. If you just look at the prison populations. But
El Salvador, we have a word, but yeah,
yeah. But we do have this standard that we hold ourselves to, like enshrined in a document that's in the seat of power, and pretty consistently fail to live up to those standards. I think that's part of why, when Americans do finally wake up to the injustice, that the backlash is so swift and severe.
Yeah, good commentary, guys, on the current state of the system. I guess thinking about this and adding to it, starting with what Rare was talking about with regards to how people think about certain offenders, Ross included, and a lot of these other folks. Most people are highly conditioned and indoctrinated. This goes all the way back to public education, the schooling system, the way people are brought up. They're brought up to obey authority, to not think for themselves, and to follow whatever is trending. So anytime something like this crops up and a person is a quote unquote convicted felon, or they're about to get into trouble for something, it's supposed to be assumed that the government is right and whatever they did is wrong. There's a psychologist who wrote a kind of obscure book called Waking Up. The name of the author is Charles Tart. And he talks about this idea of consensus trance, that we go through life in this sort of waking stupor, not really thinking until we're able to snap out of that. Sometimes it's a trauma that causes that. Sometimes it's, in my case, it was a quasi psychedelic, right? I took MDMA and I actually had a quantum personality shift and woke up and realized I want to do more with my life and understand shit that's happening around me. So I think most people go through this state of mind. So it's no wonder that they're easily conditioned and not willing to easily go up in arms against the system, plus all the risk that's involved in that. When you start talking back against the powers that be, people will try to come, men with guns can potentially come after you, and that's a scary thought for most people. So the revolutionary spirit is not endemically, naturally embedded in people. I mean, and this is also a thing in Ross's case, right? You had all of these people, and this is kind of antithetical, or the other position from what I talked about earlier, as I was talking about in the context of like us and people awake. But okay, you had people like Nick Bilton writing a book called what was it, American, what was it? Forget the name of the book. Anyway, he wrote a book, and American Kingpin. That's it. American Kingpin. Nick Bilton. It's just a smear campaign on Ross and the whole trial. So people got that. The media, of course, was spouting all of this nonsense and all these lies. They were keeping with the narrative. And this was all part of the government's agenda to crack down, right?
So, yeah, well, I mean, it's part.
Oh, they got him. There we go.
Yeah.
Start again. Sorry.
Yeah, what I was going to say was I find it interesting that a lot of the cracks started in 2015, and then it broke wide open in 2020, and most notably with like Jeffrey Epstein and all the things that were going on. And you can see that, government is actually trying to cover itself in a lot of different ways. And, thank God for the internet, because then people go sleuthing, finding all kinds of details, rabbit holes, and then exposing what they find. And it's interesting to see that there's this big sea change happening, and it's happening slowly. But I also feel like there is a part where we're certainly, if we had Kamala had taken office, we were definitely a doomed society. Like nail and coffin, we're getting buried, because if you look at all the infrastructure around us, just crumbling. And there's a quote from the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, where it goes, it's only at the brink that people find the will to change. Only at the precipice do we evolve, right? And I think that was one of those things where we've come so close to the edge that there's, I mean, look, the whole election was a big tidal wave for change, something different to happen. I mean, whether all of these guys are quote unquote on our side is TBD, but it exposed so much this entire time. And I think there was, just maybe a giant consciousness that said, hey, we have to change. This can't go on anymore. And I think Ross's case is a big turning point. That's my kind of outlook on it. It's a very macro, view, but I think it's something that we definitely need to catalog somewhere permanently.
I do agree. Sorry, I'll let someone else talk. I gotta, because mine is a ramble.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily entirely disagree with what you said, Rare. I think my perspective is slightly more nuanced, because I don't believe in the fundamental difference between Trump and Kamala's administration, because it's populated by far more people than the figureheads. I don't think that they're fundamentally different in so much as they're going to be perpetuating the types of power that they represent, which 100%. Is not necessarily in the American people's interest.
Right.
But what I do strongly agree with you on, is that Kamala's, as an extension of the Obama-Biden administration momentum, was absolutely going to quash any type of freedom technology. They were on track to destroy anything resembling decentralized artificial intelligence. They were certainly well into a years-long campaign to destroy cryptocurrency and decentralized technology. In that respect, they were trying to clamp down on any type of democratized media certainly, which is anti-freedom any way you look at it. All the things that are the modern equivalent of the printing press, we're not going to see a loosening of the strings of the rope around their neck under a Kamala administration. I still believe that we're just as prone to a societal collapse under the Trump administration as the Kamala administration, but at least we have a shot at building the systems to fall back on in that event of a a catastrophic event.
Yeah, I'm with
That's
you.
where I derive my hope from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Maybe I see things a little different. Where I see the old way that we've had since like World War II, right? That society, that way of life, has just ultimately crumbled. But there's something new popping up, right? As things make a shift, as a transition. My concern is I don't know these new powers that are here, right? And while we like to cheer and celebrate the admin Elon and all that, still a lot of these guys are tied in with the intelligence community. They're still tied in with a lot of this stuff that could backdoor us and rug pull us. And so it's good, things are changing. We have to keep an eye on everything and stay vigilant. That's where the conclusion I've drawn from all of this.
Yeah, it's been very fascinating to observe. For me, it's been a sideshow because what I care about is, beyond like all this kind of stuff. Kind of like, Dr. Manhattan sitting on the moon is just watching the world pass by type thing. It's one of those type of things where, obviously I care about radical freedom and sovereignty and all this kind of stuff. And the way the world did not switch over to that. It switched over to a new vibe of some kind, and I think probably a much better vibe, but still not what I'm looking for. And that's okay. It's just the world changes. One thing that's been interesting to see, as anyone who's kind of studied history has seen, kind of the power structures, like the formats of power structures do shift over time. There's always power, but who has it and what kinds of entities have it and in what ways and how do they jockey against each other has shifted. Like, for example, there was a time when the church, whatever church that might be, held immense amounts of like hard political power, including like declared active war. And obviously people involved in religious organizations and the organization themselves still hold sway. But at some point, for example, the nation state became the apex of power in the world, where, it was a nation around a common people with common borders and stuff. That was the most powerful thing, was the government of that nation. And after the Second World War ended, we had the I guess the Allied powers, minus the Soviet Union, were kind of one hegemonic group. And against them, with the Cold War, it's this Soviet world, the communist world, versus the Western powers. After the Soviet Union fell, we just had this like sprawling system that just sought to have influence everywhere, and it headed by the U.S. for sure, but not only the U.S. It's like the U.S., Canada, all the Western European powers, all kind of working together, all kind of doing stuff in concert, such as singling out certain rogue nations or whatever, such as persecuting Julian Assange in concert. And like it's very interesting things where you see this power structure move as one, even though it's technically a bunch of independent, democratically elected leaders and governments and stuff with all different cultures around the world. And but somehow they're all settling on the same thing here. It's a little weird. And
well, hey man, it's like Carlin said, it's a big club.
And you're not there. You're not invited. But so the funny thing also is, I believe that empire died this year. That doesn't mean empires died this year. But it does seem like, for some reason, once you cut off the snake's head with the passing of the democratic / neocon hegemony in the U.S., then you saw all of a sudden, like, now Trudeau's out. Now a whole bunch of other like leaders, supposedly independent leaders, all of a sudden just whack, 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 whack. They're all collapsing like dominoes. And it's an interesting shift. and also it's in the era where you have certain individuals, and I don't know who else I could really group into this, but for example, Elon Musk, who is a one-man nation state kind of in terms of power and influence, and it's very interesting.
Well, it's all the people that they were calling oligarchs on mainstream media, right? So
Yes.
you got to. I mean, they're not all at Elon's level wealth wise, but certainly influence. You've got Bezos, you've got Musk, you've got the CEO of ByteDance. I forget his name. All those people that were up there on the dais representing immense amounts of power. You know,
Yes.
and I get it's like what you're saying. Like this is definitely a shift in some ways.
Yeah, those are the new power brokers, or the new apexes of power, or these kinds of, I would say, tech oligarchs, kind of. Or
Yes.
the new tech overlords are the new thing, and that's kind of there's a lot of positive and negative you could say about that. That's just like a neutral statement, like a statement of fact. This is where before it was countries, now it's these tech overlords, kind of.
No, well, these guys are practically at sovereign individual levels. The only thing they're missing is a mass army, and then, they could be very disruptive.
So that's what it takes in this world to be a sovereign individual. It's not declaring it when you get pulled over. It's having the most amount of money in the world.
Yeah, it's not even money. It's like it all
Power.
comes down to power and the ability to back up your sovereignty, right? So, I mean, if you can grease the palms of who's ever going to arrest you, and they let you get away with it, great. But if not, then, and I think that's where concepts like Second Amendment terrifies a lot of the power structures, because what way to make put people on equal footing than both having the same means of protection? And they don't like that, And I was thinking of this quote. This one is about like the shift in power and like how it seems everything's in our favor, and hopefully it's not too cynical. But it goes, whenever circumstance brings some welcome thing your way, stop in suspicion and alarm. Wild animals and fish alike are taken in by this or that, prospect. Do you look at them as a present gifted to you by fortune? Beware their snares.
What a fudster, man.
I
It's
just say this, dude.
it
It's
is
like,
true. I mean, yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, maybe this is what winning looks like, and you're just constantly, success after success. I don't know what that's like in this term, because, again, we've all been facing this uphill battle for decades.
Yeah, we've been losing, and that's one thing where my previous career was in like public policy and politics and stuff like that. And part of the reason I got out and shifted to crypto is because I was tired of losing. I was just tired of being like the lone pro liberty voice and just being like Mr. Bitch at all the bills. Like that's all I could do. Could just powerless to stop them. Kind of like, oh, this new thing.
I was such a weakling. I ran one dude for state legislator on the libertarian ticket, and I said, no more. I can't do this again.
You just get crushed. It sucks. And it's like, how many more policy papers and op-eds can you write that then just like people mock and then nothing doesn't work? And at some point with crypto, that was like, we're building something exciting and new that like, kind of takes us off in that direction. And this is one of those first times there. I kind of had a preview. I should be more tired of winning than maybe some of you other guys, but like I had a preview because ever since I've been in New Hampshire, the Free State movement has really organized super well around making big improvements, including the roots of the crypto movement, but also like the state level government stuff has been getting consistently better year after year since I've about the 11 or 12 years that I've been here. And so I kind of got a preview of what winning looks like. I'm like, wow, you can actually kind of win in this little pocket here. But then now you have on the national level that you see, again, how many days in are we? Like we can't really say that we know what the new vibe is because we just seen a couple days. But I like a lot of what I've seen in the last couple days. And it used to be that I like nothing. Now there's like, well, Ross is out, there's some important hiring freezes. What was it?
Yeah.
Doge just said that they cut $420 million from the budget, which is
I
I'm
think
sure a
so.
strategic number for
There's a
for the lulls.
Yeah, there's a on the what is it, usdebtclock.org. Like there's a Doge counter now, which shows like how much they're supposedly saving. I want to know how they get to those figures, but it's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, I definitely I'm taking it as it is. I'm trying not to let you know, the pessimism take over and be like, oh, hey, no, it's a good place to things for now seem optimistic. And maybe it's worth continuing to build here versus I'm going to kick my plan B into action and sayonara.
I mean, yeah, I've definitely delayed my expatriation efforts. Like I was, depending on the outcome of the election, I just wasn't comfortable continuing because I've decided apparently that I'm going to continue a career in crypto despite the government telling me that's a bad idea. So it was a decision as to whether or not I was going to do that here or somewhere else to be safe for me and
Right.
the family. So
Which you
yeah,
have
I
to
feel
admit,
like I
that's
feel like
kind
I can stick around for another couple of years at minimum.
that is kind
Yeah,
of
minimum.
a ballsy move to be like, I'm still doing crypto after that. It's like the only way you could top that is if like, on Monday, then Ross Ulbricht launches the Satin Path. It's like, oh no, it's back. I was like, dude, you didn't learn to stay away a little bit. It's one of those kinds of things, which we kind of touched on that. I mean, Ellie did, at least right before she left, touched on what do you think Ross is going to do? First of all, I mean, I know he's going to chill for a while, which is great. I did not realize that he had a wife until, kind of came out recently. He got married while in prison. It wasn't someone he knew on the outside, apparently. Lots of major life changes involved in his whole life right now. But as far as I know, I think Kraken, or I don't know if it was Jesse Powell or if it was Kraken itself, but someone in there gave him like well over a Bitcoin. So
Yeah, Kraken dropped some stats on this dude.
yeah,
And then just looking at the donations too, like I think Ross is going to be okay. They might not give him back his coin, but at this point, it's great to see the community coming together to bring somebody back.
yeah, I read some of his writings that he did while he was on vacation, about DAOs, or not really a DAO specifically, but like something like that, like decentralized technical structures of some little thing. And it seemed like his eyes are still on the prize. And I hope he doesn't just like, I hope he like develops stuff. I hope he doesn't run things. Just stay away from running. But as far as like dreaming up ideas or being like, well, what if we organize this way, and getting into like the DAO and decentralized tech scene, I think would be very cool for him. Doesn't have to make money because he's got a bunch now, but as long as he doesn't get no one tell him about meme coins.
Well, I think we're safe there too because there's a Solana project that's been pretty consistently donating to him to the family. So maybe he'll feel like the free Ross now meme coin is the he doesn't need to go out and launch his own. They're doing the job, and they're the ones that printed out all the signs that were at the inauguration too. So they're actually doing real work, not just cashing in on the name.
Yeah, that's my buddy Kenny Palorentano. He'll actually be at the People's Reset. If you guys aren't familiar, Derek's having his event in Morelia in Mexico, and it corresponds with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. So the Greater Reset or the People's Reset. Anyway, yeah, Kenny is the one who launched Free Ross now and has been working really hard to keep money flowing to the family and to support Ross. It's been pretty sweet.
That's good. I'm not.
Yep.
I don't really know him, but I just see the activity online and appreciated that someone was carrying the torch for him.
Yep, you nailed it. He's doing fantastic. It's all legit too. A lot of people that's good that you noticed, Mark, that it was a legit project because of the way that he set it up is so oriented for Ross and the family, right? Because it sends funds back when people sell it too. It's really good.
See, there's the positive part for meme coins.
Yeah.
I remember Andreas Antonopoulos was talking about that's what's going to happen. People would be able to create their own type of token. You like them, right? You want to support them, and here's a means by which you can, do that. So, sure, Trump coin bad, Haktua, whatever. But the concept still remains. It's like you can do something really positive just as well as do something really stupid.
Yeah.
This is actually, I'm writing an editorial like this. It's going to go out. I somehow got it approved to go out with the Threshold DAO newsletter. So like 70,000 people that subscribe to information about DeFi are going to get a dose of OG in their face this week, OG cypherpunk in their face this week. But the basic idea, because there's a lot of like negative sentiment in the Web3 and DeFi corners of crypto right now. Just disappointed that, Trump is introducing or legitimizing this degen world. But really, that is, to me, like kind of the height of.
I'll be right back, guys. Somebody keeps knocking at my door. It's kind of weird. Be right back.
Okay. It's kind of like the height of like arrogance, I guess, a little bit, because like what was Free Ross DAO, but itself like an NFT meme coin that we fractionalized for the same sort of like socially aware, social justice type thing for Ross, right? What is Ukraine DAO? What is what Constitution DAO? These are essentially meme coins that had like a some sort it was cashing in on the same type of thing that a meme coin does, even if there was an altruistic bent to it. People weren't doing it because of altruistic bent. People were doing it because they saw a few group of people that wanted to buy the Constitution and then somehow wound up 10xing their money out of this weird thing. So they're like, well, crap, I'm going to speculate on charitable causes for this season. And that's what happened. And, we can't get too high on our own supply as cypherpunks to look down the noses at the hoi polloi in the world of degen. We just need to educate them, educate them as to what allows that to be here, because they don't get that yet, but they can if we tell them.
Yeah, I think it's all still too new, and everything is just very experimental, right? And even if the tech, some of it's been matured, it's probably on a social level not going to mature itself until many years later. Granted, we survive, and crypto is still around, and we haven't done something stupid, incredibly, that we can't go back. But I know, in discussions with some people, the idea that the Trump coin is just rugging us and whatever. It's like, yeah, but let's look at this. There's a way that he can fund himself outside, right? He doesn't have to take direct donations from the same players in Washington. So that's kind of a net positive. And again, this is a way that other people can also fund the creators that they like. I mean, NFTs were one way, but that never took off. It got such bad publicity. And I thought, wow, hey, this was a great way for digital creators to create content and have a means by which to sell them, and so I think the meme coin aspect is it's still experimental. We're gonna fuck around. Sorry, getting demonetized, Joel.
We've said much worse on that. Usually on shows with you, but I haven't held it against you. Well,
yeah,
hey,
but I mean,
Coin ATM Radar still sponsors me. So as of a week ago, so I'm fine.
Hey, congratulations!
I don't care if Google removes their pennies.
Yeah, but I mean, I think all of this still, again, if we don't do something stupid in terms of legislation, in terms of any more of this consensus nonsense, I think there's still a lot of positive aspects that can come out of this. So Trump's coin, whatever, Ross coin, hey, that's great, right? It's two sides of the same coin. Which one do you favor?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, just the ability to do stuff, I think, is cool. And that's the thing that I think, the longer I've been in crypto, each passing year, I get much less frustrated with the degens and retail and people like that, and much more think they know more than they let on, the dumb people, so to speak. I don't know if they're that dumb after all. There's something when people in the intellectual way don't get this, but they do in the heart sort of get what this is. Obviously Trump is he's not doing he was doing meme coins and stuff or NFT collections or whatever way before it became part of his campaign to try to curry favor of the crypto movement. What he did intrinsically understand is I can do this. I can't do that in the legacy world. And even though there's not much thought about, well, apparently the nodes in the decentralized structure and give a crap about that, but he just gets that you can do this and you can't do that. And people use say Tether in the developing world because they can't get a bank account, but Tether will sling some, super sketchy tokens their way. They can use that. And then what was it? Someone just robbed an exchange or something like that, or I forget what happened. Or no, the Ledger co-founder got captured and held for ransom, and that was a scary episode. And I believe the ransom was paid in Tether. They wanted Tether, and as soon as they got Tether, they just got frozen. Tether just froze those funds, and so they got nothing. And it's just I think that's going to kill a lot of Tether's clout in the underworld because they're oh, I can't. It's not good for ransom money because they'll just freeze it. And so people do learn. They understand exactly what this is about, but it's just in a much more vague and in sort of intuitive way than it is in this high-minded intellectual way where we write white papers on this and compare node counts and stuff.
Now, I don't. Maybe that's the thing. At least I'm having this a moment, and here's me rage and rant quite a bit. Or I think a lot of the stuff that we have a lot of pseudo intellectuals in the space, right? And they'll write pages upon pages of text and stuff to explain a concept, but it's always black and white. It's never, looking at things from a real gray perspective. And then nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. And so it's just the blind leading the blind. Yeah, exactly. So it'll take a while. That's for damn sure. Probably a lot longer than we need to, or than it should have been.
Yeah. At least think about going back to the Silk Road and Ross for a second. It is something interesting that a friend of mine mentioned. He said that the Silk Road was his number. People were for the longest time being oh, we got to shake crypto's reputation as being this drug money. And he leaned into it. He was just I try to tell people about Bitcoin. And it's oh, Bitcoin's great. And it's the first thing I mentioned is have you heard of the Silk Road? And first off, everyone had, or a lot more people had. And they're oh, yeah, I remember about that thing. And he's just this is where you go to buy all your cool party drugs. And you need Bitcoin for that. It's oh. And obviously this was a person in communities where that was a, the crowds I frequent would probably not view that as a plus, but a lot of people, a good chunk of the world, just oh, okay, that it works for this thing that other things don't work for, and you understand the permissionlessness at the end of it, and because a lot of people were just for the, and it's there's too big, we cannot escape this because we're trying to build permissionless money. And the two first use cases, killer apps for Bitcoin and therefore for crypto that launched the whole space, were Satoshi Dice, a gambling, and which is arguably meme coins today, right? And then the Silk Road, buying weed and other stuff, mostly weed probably. And that's permissionless finance. And you could buy things that are censored. And it's just literally people are being blocked from high yield opportunities for earning because they can't have to be an accredited investor, and there's all this other stuff. And then, as I mentioned, I forget where else this week, capital gains laws. I do think they're going to be massively overhauled at some point because the average person has never touched them, at least in the US. They've never had to experience what capital, because they're just not in, they just mindlessly dump into a 401k and then they just live their lives. Whereas it's the investor class, the chosen ones get to deal with this stuff. But if the average person's wait, you mean I bought, I got paid with some crypto and it went up 20% and I have to file extra paperwork next week because I wanted to buy my wife a nice dinner from this? What the hell? Like, now you have that friction because earning potential has been excluded from the common man almost completely. And now with crypto, the fact that you can gamble on some shitcoin and probably lose everything, but maybe not, is like, now that's a killer app that wasn't there. So you have the gambling first, and then the permissionless earning and the permissionless transacting. Those two big things. I think that if you get someone who played the ideal normie to onboard to understand what this is all about, just on a whim decided to try out Satoshi Dice and then went and bought some weed off the Silk Road. And then they get it. No other lessons needed. This is, you get crypto right there.
I mean, so
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
For about 10 years, I guess, 9, 8, I'm trying to do the math right. So I got into crypto in 2011. I started writing about 2012 at SiliconANGLE. SiliconANGLE was primarily a tech blog. I left there in 2015. But for the entire time, but it's an enterprise technology blog. So the boring side of tech that nobody really wants to read about unless you have to for your job. But we were the first like Bitcoin Magazine, Cointelegraph type publication to cover cryptocurrency. And so we were amongst the first publications to get exclusives from Oracle and IBM whenever they decided to bet the farm on blockchain tech, back when they decided to do that. And constantly we had to either field editorials, field questions, cover analyst reports, or just, the question is, what problem has blockchain ever solved? And because it was enterprise, because they were so hard trying to distance themselves from the hookers and blow portions of crypto and the Silk Road, they couldn't point to a single use case where crypto had solved a problem. Because the 2-3 biggest things were stuff that were not going to fly with the button down suit and ties that they had to sell to. And so I think that's a huge reason why there's that, I would call it the dark ages of blockchain, really, from like 2014 to 2017, whenever we just decided, okay, we'll screw it. We'll get into ICOs or whatever. But like that, literally, people don't realize. So IBM has been kind of, I wouldn't say as a failing organization because they're over 100 years old, but IBM is an organization that primarily makes all of its money servicing equipment that was originally installed in the 60s, right? And stuff that is like descendant of those 60s era mainframes. And they have been struggling since the dawn of the internet to find new markets to fill that can replace that old revenue. And a lot of it, the only things that have been really successful for them have been acquisitions of other organizations like Red Hat, And so when Ginny Rometty was CEO, and I think it was just too early, and it was a big part of it. But when she was CEO, she came out one year at their big vendor show and said, "We are betting the future of IBM on 2 things: Watson, which is AI, and blockchain, which was I forget the name of their variant of Ethereum, but it was basically an Ethereum fork." And I think the main reason why AI failed is it was just too early. LLMs had not been invented yet. It was a different form of generative AI. And the big reason why blockchain failed is because they couldn't point to, the best thing they could do was point to what was basically a precursor to NFTs as a form of supply chain management. But it was slower, more expensive, and because it was on private ledgers, not public blockchains, offered almost no advantages over existing technologies like SQL and Oracle. So, and they couldn't say, oh, well, there's this multi-million-dollar e-commerce website that's selling tons of shit every day, and or the essential piece of the global supply chain because it was Silk Road, and they didn't want to say those words, but they could have.
Yeah, and I almost wonder what would happen if they did, like if they decided to maybe not be like, this is our business model, because no, you can't do that, but to just unabashedly say, look, there's a use case in blockchain, and we're going to say we're not into this use case, but that it's real and there's value behind it. And I wonder, maybe, obviously that would come with some costs to express that publicly, but I'm sure it could have had some interesting benefits too, where you're like, the unregulated commerce kind of part. But you know what's the funny thing is, in order to make the legacy fiat world work the way it does, in order to provide the guardrails or whatever crap you want to come up with, you have to introduce so much friction and cost into the system. It's just mind-boggling. And so just the fact that you're using something you don't have, that's not permissioned, even if you're like, well, blockchains inherently aren't scalable, okay, whatever. Just the fact that you don't have to like here's the thing. They're one of the worst things when I onboard someone to use crypto is KYC. Not because these people don't have legitimacy as far as the government's concerned. It's just such a pain in the ass. You gotta do it, and like, oh, take the picture, and it came through blurry. Can you do it? Or like, I'm out and about in a coffee shop. I'm like, you want to buy your first crypto? And they're just like, I don't want to do this, and pull out my passport in front of the world. Like, just, it's such an annoying friction to where you have to do that or explain this transaction just to be like, download the app, zip, there you go. It just works.
Oh, that's what you do? Because I've been telling people they have to go through like a urine test as well.
Yeah, on the block, urine test on the blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you want to buy some crypto? Sure. I give them a cup, pee in this one, we'll come back afterwards. It's just, I mean, just zap? What?
Yeah.
Piss to earn. I can't wait for Piss to earn to come out of this show.
Piss to earn. That's going to be an interesting thing. But just the I've noticed something in using modern tech is that databases are so siloed. They're so like everyone has their one. And you end up having these giant tech companies like Google that just run like all the maps infrastructure or whatever else. And it ends up not being ideal. But just like the fact that you just need a login for every website you ever use. You got to like have your account. Everyone's got an account. You give them your email and just all that friction. And the fact that like the data is not universal. You got to be like, okay, well, I posted that over here, but like I want to create an account here. And now they don't have any of this data. And there isn't, it just, I just want to just use.
It's also tiresome, buddy.
Yeah, it's also tiresome. And that's what I like about public blockchains is the fact that they're public and anyone can use it and anyone can access them. And it just, the smooth sailing once you get in there is just like, it's just so nice. And I think that that's something that I think that someone, for example, like IBM could potentially have articulated. But even in so, there's so many landmines around saying like, oh yeah, all these other respectable business models are crap. You have to step on toes to say this is a better way.
There was remember Roger said something about blockchain is really when we started having recorded truth or recorded history. That's when we're really having recorded history, because now it's like immutable. It's hard to destroy, if ever. There was a movement. I don't know if it's still going on, but this is when ordinals first popped out on the Bitcoin blockchain. But you could make inscriptions. Somebody created a website, and then you could log news articles on there. So that way, when a news site was going to alter it, you have a definitive place from where it came from, kind of like archive.is or whatever. But now it's on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's like, oh, okay, now you try editing your headline now, or try editing your text here. Like now it's recorded, on a SAT. I thought that was pretty ingenious, and why some people don't like the idea of blockchains in general, because, well, now I can't manipulate, information as easily. I think that's a big thing going forward.
And on a similar note, I guess, I'm a big user of the platform known as X, and X for me is like Tether, in that it's for the most part it LARPs as a free and uncensorable kind of thing. That when you hit the edges, you start to realize that no, you can still get rugged. This is still other stuff. But for 95% of users, it feels like freedom, right? And so one thing I do it's an amazing archive where, for example, I was looking into some confidential transaction stuff in, being like legacy CT, not ring CT, for example. And I was just thinking, oh, like, what has anyone talked about how these would be affected by quantum computing? And so I just like look in those search terms and just goes through this massive thing. And then I found some like 2015 or 2017, I don't remember the year, but like Adam Back saying some stuff about how Peterson commitment confidential transactions could not have their privacy unwound by quantum computers, but maybe they could introduce extra emission from this. And then the other kind, I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. Just a massive public time-stamped record of so many knowledgeable conversations and things, or just this guy said this at this point in time. Here you go. Here's the proof. And it's pretty amazing. Of course, if Elon wanted to, or if an agency compelled him to by, legal means, not whatever was happening under the Twitter regime, they could just scrub that from history and modify timestamps and stuff like that. And then it could be completely different. So
that's what's happening during the Twitter files.
Yeah.
Right. So we've seen it in action. So it's not plausible. It is very real that it could happen.
Yeah. And so whenever you get close to glory, you can see what the full picture is like. And just like when you use Tether, you can see what uncensorable finance looks like. And just then you get censored. But you're like, before I got censored, it was cool. And just like the Silk Road was a very censorable platform, as it turns out, and very much not private. But because Bitcoin and other things like that. But now you get to see, like, that's kind of like the prototype, or the what do they call it? Like the floor model or whatever for something like
precursor.
Like DarkFi. It's like the plastic dessert that they have in the window. That's like, well, if you buy the thing, you're going to get a real version of this. It's like, but don't bite into that one. That one's fake. It's like we're kind of seeing the fake version that lets us imagine the real version. It lets us aspire.
Yeah, one of the issues, the first thing I think about, it just being in the space for so long and seeing all of the censorship take place. And of course, Joel, I remember just recently I had a few people reach out to me because they had funds frozen on Tether, and they were like, well, I thought this was decentralized. I thought this was a way for me to send my crypto without getting...
Who scammed you, bro? Who told you
that's
that?
Definitely not the case. Right. So there's a term, of course, we throw around in the space that's entirely accurate, is this idea of decentralization theater. A lot of people pretend that there's more decentralization than there actually is. But there is some good news. You were talking about one of the huge problems is this issue with data storage and data maintenance, and that it's all centralized and there's all these data warehouses. So there are a few organizations and entities and platforms in the ecosystem that are working on this problem. Of course, you're probably familiar with the new phrase people throw around, DPIN, decentralized physical infrastructure. So a couple of those organizations, like Filecoin is one. I work with the guys at Codex. That's another one. But building these decentralized data storage protocols is extremely difficult to do it at scale. But it's recently become more feasible because of zero knowledge cryptography. Allows you, it's not only used for privacy, it also allows you to do proof compression and things like that. So it is feasible, but it's going to take us a little time to get there. But I do think we can solve this problem of decentralization theater. And this goes to your point, why I think this idea that a lot of people see crypto as being a lot more open and decentralized than it is, but it acts as the prototype or the precursor or the vision for what it can become. And I think we're trying to start realizing that really the problem is infrastructural, right? And the way that we've been doing things is sort of what did Andreas Antonopoulos call this, like skeuomorphic design. A lot of the times when we design a new technology, we add vestigial implementations to that technology, or vestigial designs that we're just used to. We've used it over and over and over again, so it makes sense to do that because it works, rather than trying to innovate or experiment, right? So yeah, this is what, like at Codex, which referred to as principle-centric design, where we're trying to keep the cypherpunk values actually built into the tech. That's tremendously expensive because you're not guaranteed to make any kind of money or revenue off of that in the near-term future. 100%.
That makes sense. And also, we've been going for an hour and a half or more. Probably a good time to start winding this thing down. Why don't we just, I guess, go around in Brady Bunch style, and I don't know. I guess just recap like what this means, the whole Ross being free, like just your general perspective in like a few sentences. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Cool.
So, I got pulled into like a Twitter Spaces like the day that it all happened, and so and at the end of it, they asked kind of a similar question. It's kind of like, what's this mean to you? What is this? It was even a Twitter Spaces for crypto. It was something AI related, but they just wanted to vector into the big news that happened in the middle of their show. And so I was kind of reminded to. I mean, like I just was, kind of rambling at the moment, but it kind of came together. So whenever I was locked up, especially as you get close to the end of it, everybody around you starts asking, what are you going to do when you get out? Right. And the expected answer is like, I'm going to go get laid or eat a steak or something like that. But like, I actually had thought about it. I had it like my three things were in my head. Number one, I was going to have a temperature controlled shower because there's no knobs in there that control the temperature. It's just on or off. The second thing was I wanted to sleep on something that wasn't a steel cot with like a 1/4 inch of cushion. And the third thing is I wanted to have non-violent physical touch. Like a year of not having that was not even a whole year for me. You don't realize what you're missing until you go through it. Mm-hmm. And that day in that moment, as I was watching, I remember the moment that the picture of Ross, came across the feed of him coming out of the parking lot. And I thought to myself, like, this is the first moment. Like, this is his first milestone. He's touching somebody. He's touching a loved one right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not against the rules. And it's not, in anger or violence or anything like that. He's actually getting to what that must have meant to him and what that must have meant for his family in that moment. It was truly overwhelming. I'm even feeling it again right now as I think about it. Because I was there for a second compared to Ross, right? And so I was in the daddy daycare of prison facilities compared to he was in a supermax and a max for his entire term. You see violence in those facilities. You might see violence in the ones that I was in, but you definitely do, and you probably are expected to commit violence to survive. So he survived that and stepped out, and in maybe never truly expected that day would come. Right? I remember the last couple of days before I was let out, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for the guards to find something else on me to extend my stay for another 3 months or something. Oh, you've got a untied shoe. Here's another shot. So like, and my stakes were way lower, right? What if the president forgets my name? That's an entirely plausible scenario.
Kind of. He misspelled Ross's last name in his post. Thankfully, not on the pardon.
No, thankfully not. Someone fact checked the part. But what I'm saying is like, just that. Those are my final thoughts. Those are my first thoughts, and those are my final thoughts. Where I just keep going back to the human element of his case. It is entirely overwhelming to me, and I cannot imagine the tears of joy that must be coming from everybody around him and his immediate family. And these days and weeks, and I just, surely Ross. I know Ross. Maybe if this message gets to Ross, just enjoy it. This is the time right now. You'll never forget these moments.
Perfect.
Cool. I'll go, I guess.
Yeah.
Good. Well said, Mark. I'm also on board with you with the human element, thinking about going back to what you said earlier too, with Lynn and the relief and that she must feel, and the sense of, I did this and now I can be with Ross. We can have a whole family. We can feel whole. We can take the time to heal, but just all the work and the dedication that she's put into this over the years has to have taken a toll, a mental and a physical toll. But now just the fact of finally I've achieved victory. We've accomplished what we've set out to accomplish. Ross is free now. She can just take this time to be with him and to experience that, and that must be an amazing thing to behold. But aside from the personal element, which is extremely vital, is also the philosophical ramifications of this. I think Ross getting freed is, and I agree with Rare earlier, there is certainly a sea change abreast that we're involved in. There's some mind share that's taking place, a paradigm shift of sorts. Even if the system is still in place as it stands, that doesn't mean that people's thought processes can't change. That could lead to something greater and better for us down the road. I mean, working in crypto for so long and actually being victimized by the federal agencies and being involved in Operation Chokepoint 2.0 and losing all of these bank accounts, I finally feel like I don't have to wait for it. Like the knock on my door earlier, it's like, God, is this the FBI? Wait, maybe I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't think.
The thought crossed my mind to make a joke about it.
Yeah, right.
But
nail it. It's still like a trauma response from all the things that we dealt with. But now finally, I wonder if I could go with my business and get a bank account if we need. Like if we're a cryptocurrency trade desk, you need a fiat account, right?
mm-hmm.
So that makes me feel really good, and even more. I'm generally an optimistic person, and like you guys, I had considered maybe moving to somewhere else rather than staying in the States, but now I don't feel as pressured to do that anymore. And maybe especially if the rules change around crypto and the requirements, the tax requirements on capital gains changes, that's going to be even better for a lot of us in the States. So I feel fantastic. They're moving in the right direction. I think Trump, you guys talked about this earlier, I won't get into too much detail, but what he's doing actually, for the first time since I've been a libertarian and thinking along those lines, which has been a long time now, around 15 years, I see that this is the first time a president has actually taken drastic change toward freedom, or what looks like it. Yeah. Right. I still am a bit skeptical, and I'm going to continue to be skeptical of government solutions. But I do feel like maybe there's something that likely from his own experiences with the system, where some of what he's doing is actually genuine, because you don't always feel like a politician is genuine, and what they're doing doesn't have some kind of ulterior motive. So I'm really optimistic about the future, especially for our space in crypto.
Perfect. Rare, what do you got to say?
I'll end it with a quote, not my own. I'm borrowing this, of course.
Plagiarism.
The only thing we can do is live, and the only way we can live is fearlessly. Welcome, Ross. Hope you hear this. Free Ross, free Roger, free all of them.
There we go. And all I'll say is that other than we're super happy that Ross is out, that everything happened, I always thought seeing the vast amount of change we have to do, it's like the battle for the future of humanity. And even when you win, what you don't realize is there's casualties along the way. And I think I've always thought crypto is unstoppable, and it's clearly showing to be something like that. But we are stoppable as individuals, and there's a human cost to a lot of things. And I always used Ross as a big example of this, of like, don't forget that you are human, and like Ross, you could lose everything in this thing. And I still believe that, but I'm very happy that my number one example is no longer applicable anymore. That, maybe it is, though. Maybe because he lost a good decade, he didn't see a second of his 30s, as far as I understand, in the free world. And that's a big cost, and I just would remind people that there is a cost, and look after each other. Don't end up like that if you can avoid it. Sometimes you're just going to have to fight, and sometimes you're just going to have to be one of those casualties of the fight. It happens, but try not to. And take care of the people who are. Keep their names, obviously, in your mind and memory, but also help the ones that are still there and still with us. And, free Roger, free Alexei, free Roman, free Samurai, free all of them. And give good advice to the rest so they can hopefully not have the same fate.
As the abolitionists say, none of us are free until they're all free.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you guys. Everyone, thanks for watching. This has been a good, finally just a not negative headline story show. It's finally we have something good to celebrate, and really good to celebrate. And yeah, it's been great. Everyone, maybe do we need to throw any more money at Ross, or is he already richer than all of us?
It can't hurt until he's back on his feet.
Yeah, everyone, and I would implore everyone, give him a good 6 months before you hit him up for your stupid podcast. I'm looking at you, Vlad. Just kidding. Vlad has actually hit him up, but be nice, Vlad. Come on. Just
he liked my comment where I advised him the same way, so I guess he got the message.
Yes, he's a good guy, but just leave the dude alone for a while. There was I think it was a Babylon Bee post or whatever that says that like heartless Trump sentences Ross Ulbricht to 20 years of libertarian podcasts, and it's just like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude, you're in it. So thank God Ross is free. Thanks for everyone for being here, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.